How are you today, Josh?
I'm okay. I just got back from a little weekend trip up to Northern California.
Oh, you're so lucky you get to go places.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit more open here. I'm fully vaccinated,
Yeah,
so I hope you're jelly.
I'm very gelatinous, extremely jelly.
Oh, I'm sorry that it's taken longer for you guys up in Canada,
Yeah, well, me too.
but it'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, your
You know,
intentions make me feel slightly better.
my intention, I feel like you're trying to lead us
Yeah,
in
I was. It
very
didn't really.
clumsily into
I
our
was
topic
extremely
for today.
clumsy. Well, I tried.
How are you, Aya?
I'm all right.
Yeah,
I have some allergies, but
I have allergies too, I think. We both have allergies, but we're countries apart.
my allergies. Welcome back to Adulthood Friends. This is the discussion based podcast where two former childhood acquaintances, now friends, discuss the things that adverb, Josh,
Reasonably.
reasonably matter.
It's your adverb of the week.
And I'm Aya,
I'm Josh.
and welcome to episode 19. And today we're going to be talking about intention versus action.
Hmm.
So we're wondering, do intentions matter? And how much do they matter
Compared to action.
compared to action? Exactly. Thank you, Josh. And have you been offended? And have you offended people? And is it more
Yeah,
important to be kind or to be right? I don't know if that's a question we should ask or not, but
it's totally a question we should ask.
all right, perfect. And another question I have, do actions matter more from people with power or influence?
Ooh,
Yeah, what do you think of our topic today, Josh?
I think it's going to hit pretty close to home in some places.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah.
should we get into it then?
Let's get into it, Aya.
And we're back. Hey, Josh,
Hey, Aya.
have you ever offended someone unintentionally?
Have I ever offended someone unintentionally?
Yeah, or upset someone unintentionally?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
Not a
Oh,
lot. Okay,
okay.
more than, I shouldn't say a lot. It's not like I do this all the time, but I've done it more than I've wanted to.
Mm,
I don't think I've offended people intentionally.
hmm
Okay, you know what the thing is? Here's the thing about me. I have these like two sides to myself. One is this people pleasing type of side where I want to, I just want everyone to like me,
hmm
and I'm very empathetic towards them, and I try to consider, what that person would or wouldn't like, or would be offended by. But then there's this other kind of trolley side to me where I like to like push the boundaries, push some buttons just to see if we can either, I don't know, I like to test the limits of people's beliefs a little bit. And that can get me in trouble sometimes. Some people have the personality type where they love that and they engage with me on that. And other people are very uncomfortable with it. And I don't always know whether someone's going to be uncomfortable with it till I do it. And I don't even recognize sometimes when I'm doing it. I think sometimes when I get a little bored in conversation, I think that's when I do it.
Yeah.
I start pushing a little bit.
Mm.
There's this guy that lives in my house who's this most wonderful, sweet guy. His name's Oscar. He's from Colombia.
He's not the grouch.
He's not a grouch in any way. No,
Okay.
he's just the nicest. Like literally, we'll wake up in the morning and he'll have made muffins for everybody.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, sweetest guy in the world.
Mm.
But he tells me things like he doesn't really like to watch dark movies, and he doesn't like to talk about upsetting things. He's really into Disney films. He's really into Taylor Swift.
Mm.
He has a very like positive, upbeat personality, but it almost like to some people might seem a little too much. Like what? Like there's got to be something going on. Like,
Right.
and I just couldn't help. I couldn't just leave it there, right? I have to like test his views of the world. Like, you really think everything's just like generally positive? And so I remember I call this a game. It's like the who would you kill game. I started playing with him.
Mm.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, all right, it's like you have to make a choice, your mom or your dad, you know?
That's a horrible game. How is that a game?
Oh, I like it because it really tests, like, you have to make logical, non-emotional choices. If you're forced with these decisions that, you have to, for example, okay, would you save this person that you love, or a high school class full of uh, random high school students that you don't know?
Hmm.
You know,
Are you asking me? Because I can
I'm
answer
not.
that.
I know. I think we should play this game sometime on the podcast because I think you'd
Well, do
totally be
one. Give
down
me one. Give me one.
right now. Well,
No, no,
also
it's okay.
part of the rule of this game is you shouldn't ask the person. You shouldn't put yourself into it, like me or that, because that makes it awkward.
Well, I don't have a problem with that
Like,
in this
I
case.
could ask you. It's like, well, or we shouldn't do people we've had on the podcast because they're gonna
Yeah,
listen.
that's fair. Or people that listen.
Okay, so if I made you choose between your brothers,
Oh, that's terrible.
see what I
Don't do
mean? You can't
that.
just. It's so hard to do.
That's
It's
horrible. I'm not doing that. Yeah, no, no,
not
no.
publicly.
Not even private. Don't make me do
So
that. That's
suddenly
terrible.
that was the terrible one.
Well, because you can't make, I was about to say no family members, but you said
Oh,
like a person you love versus a class of high school students. I don't even know them. What? I mean, like, I care
okay, your
about people,
friend
but
Adriana
okay.
or the city of Toronto.
Oh, but I know people in the city of Toronto, so it's not equal.
Ah, okay. You know what? I chose too big a city.
Yeah, it's way too
The
big.
city of Barrie.
Very. I would save my friend Adriana.
This is a terrible game. I can't believe you. I wanted to bring up the game without actually playing the game. We're gonna have
I'm
to.
sorry, that
We're
was my
gonna
bad.
play
Should I
this
cut
game.
that?
We're gonna actually do. No, we're gonna play this game for real sometime.
No, I don't think
Uh,
so.
yeah, I think we'll have to do an episode,
A whole episode on this? Nobody wants to hear
not
that
just on
shit.
this, but
Like horrible games.
this belongs to like some topic of like logic versus emotion or something.
Oh, good call. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So we have an example of that game.
So yeah, anyway, I basically did this with him, and I could tell like I was just going a little too far
Hmm.
by going there. That's just like one example, but I tend to do
Right.
this type of thing with some people. I guess when I feel people aren't being either honest with me or not being honest with themselves, I tend to test it a little bit.
Hmm.
I felt actually he wasn't being totally honest with himself, and I wanted to like break that. I don't know why. I don't know why I
Well, I think you're like deeply interested in people and like how they work, and you're not really interested in people keeping up the appearance of how they want to be seen.
yes, you're so right about that. But not only that, I think I'm really interested in truth. And sometimes I want truth over kindness.
Right.
Sometimes I do. It's more important for me to be correct, to be right, than it is for me to be kind. I mean, the kind thing wouldn't have been to do that.
Right.
But on the other hand, there is an advantage sometimes where
Hmm.
once I dive in deep with people, I tend to do that maybe a little too fast, but because I do that, we bond a lot faster.
Hmm.
Some of the people that I've had these kind of maybe, I don't want to say miscommunications with, but these kind of, hurdles to overcome, maybe if I push too far or something, we actually are like closer than others. Like we get really, really close, I think, when we deal with deeper things faster.
Hmm. And do you think that was the case with Oscar?
I think we're pretty close. I mean, I just went up. I said I just went on a trip up north this weekend. I went with him.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
Yeah, I
cool.
went with him, and I went with another housemate, and I went with my girlfriend.
Okay. And so,
And we had a great time. I think.
yeah,
And maybe he
okay.
hated it. I don't know.
Well, that's enough about your adventures. I'm a little too gelatinous to hear about
I
that.
know. Oh yeah, you're too peanut butter and jealous.
Yes, that's correct. So your intentions are generally good, but sometimes all you want is the truth and you're no longer really prioritizing someone else's feelings.
Well, here's the thing. I don't believe that my intentions in any of those cases were bad. I felt my intention ultimately, if I was doing that, I wanted to help Oscar realize, I don't know, the issues with the world or something, and that was going to help him ultimately instead of being too naive or something, right?
But was that going to help him or was it going to make you feel better in some way?
Maybe both.
Ugh,
I mean, obviously, I believed that it was going to help him. If I don't think
right.
something's going to help somebody, generally speaking, I mean, part of that comes down to me thinking if they just know the truth, it'll be better for them. Like then they'll
Right.
have the truth, and the truth will
Set you free.
set you free.
To say another cliche,
Yeah.
sometimes you just can't handle the truth. Maybe we don't all want to know about the dark recesses in our own minds. Maybe we don't all want you playing
But
those.
I do have this belief that when you don't address some of that stuff, sometimes it comes out in other ways, like in very, people repress things. It comes out badly. It comes out
Mhm.
as this anxiety.
Right.
I mean, that's an understanding I might have, but just just because it's a general thing that might be true doesn't mean like in the moment this is the right thing to do. And I recognize that,
Right. Right.
or at least I should recognize that usually.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I do sympathize with your position though. I'm acting all like, "Oh, interesting. So you do that." But now that you're saying
you
that,
totally do that too, don't you?
I totally do that. I
This is one of the reasons we connect. I don't know if you realized.
I think it is, and I think actually I was gonna say this earlier when you were talking about how you do that, and I was gonna be like, "Oh yeah, that's actually one of my favorite aspects of the Josh character or whatever, of you as a person." That's one of my favorite things is when you kind of push those buttons. I'll almost like you more. I'm so sad that some of our phone calls were not recorded, so I could play for people the stuff that you say that is solely kind of like button pushy or just like I don't know, just sort
And
of
you're like, everybody thinks you're so nice, Josh. They
yeah,
don't even know.
they don't even know, and they never will apparently because you do a good job of keeping it in on the
No,
podcast.
I
But I
don't.
promise everyone, he's secretly very evil. No,
No, I think those
no,
two
not at
things
all.
can coexist. I mean, I don't think they're actually contradictory. I think they appear contradictory.
Mm,
You know, I don't know. What if it's kind of like being in a therapy session and trying to push too hard with somebody
right.
too fast? Like you might have good intentions to help them, but like you're not.
Yeah.
I just want to go too fast, I think, sometimes with people.
Yeah, I think it can be intense for people, especially if they're just like at a party and like, oh, I'm gonna socialize, and they're like, I brought myself, I got myself here. It's a nice time. Everybody's happy, and then suddenly there's someone just like trying to burrow into the dark
Dark
corner.
recesses of your mind.
Yeah.
You know, not only that, I mean, someone like Oscar, he's from Colombia. He's already like translating everything from English to
Oh,
his
that's true.
language
Yeah.
every time. He's dealing with so many other things. And on top of that, I'm like making him challenge his views of the world.
Yeah. And for all you know, he is adopting all that kind of positivity to counteract some of the shit that he's gone through. Who knows? Like,
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Here's the thing. I want to ask if this is true about you as well.
hmm,
When I see inconsistencies in somebody's personality or their beliefs of the world, that I have to tackle.
yeah.
It bothers me. And I have this belief that it's going to be damaging to them as well if they don't recognize these inconsistencies. It's like believing in like a fully loving, I'm going to get a little religious here, but believing in a fully loving God and then believing that like gay people should be burned at the stake or something.
Right.
Like having those two viewpoints would be inconsistent, and I would probably try to attack that a little bit, or at least
Yeah.
question it or get them to question it.
Yeah.
Do you ever do that? Is that something that bothers you as well when you recognize those inconsistencies in somebody?
For sure. It's interesting the way that you interpret it because I don't know that it's so altruistic when I think about it. Sometimes it is certainly a curiosity. Like, how do you manage to believe this and this at the same time? I think it's more I'm interested in it more than like I think I'm going to solve it or help anyone by asking them about it. Because I guess ultimately I don't really believe I'm going to change anyone's mind, which maybe is a little bit defeatist, but
Oh, I'm like the opposite a little bit. For some reason, I
uh
always think I'm going to change everyone's mind. Like I have the way. I'm going to be the one to do it.
you know what? That's great. I think I should have a little bit of that because I mean, people's minds change. I mean, I've had discussions with lots of people where it's like, how do you simultaneously believe this and this? I don't understand how these are both somehow valid to you. And it's just I guess we all have those kind of blind spots. And yeah, I do kind of attack them, but it eventually kind of gets to the point where I feel uncomfortable kind of. It's almost like going through someone's closet and being
Yeah.
like,
It's not my closet. It's your closet. Like you deal with your
yeah,
stuff, I guess. But since I'm here, I feel like I should say something.
yep. Yeah, exactly. It's like you open someone's closet and you're like, by the way, like, that if you categorize put these and it's like, I don't what are you
It's
even
like,
doing
but
in
then
there,
again, if you didn't
Like,
say something in the first place, they may never like you think
right.
maybe me saying something will be the instigator
It's
of
true.
change here.
It's true. And I have a hard time not saying things. That's also true.
Yeah. But then again, I don't try to usually like even though I was saying like I wanted to with Oscar and the darkness, my goal is not to like show people that the world is bad or something. It's actually the opposite. I
Mm,
I believe you can believe in goodness and all that stuff, but not have false beliefs as well. I think we can be optimistically realistic or realistically optimistic without being false.
Hmm.
And I think falsehoods can be damaging. It's just a belief that I have. Like these falsehoods do spread and they become damaging, even if in the moment they don't seem as damaging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's, I guess, a,
Those are some good examples of,
split between my intention versus action there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I think there's also, this is related, but also different, the idea of intent versus impact. So this comes up a lot in, I know it's related, but it comes up mainly in sort of anti-racism, anti-sexism discussions. So the idea is that your intentions don't matter as much as the impacts they have on someone. And there is the argument that it's inherently privileged to focus on the intentions of the perpetrator rather than the feelings and experiences of the person who's affected by them.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of to bring this into larger discussions, because that is kind of a big current discussion in terms of,
Yeah.
when, even if intentions do matter, how much do they matter? Does it matter as much as the impact you have, or does it matter as much as your actions?
Yeah. It doesn't matter that the police officer didn't intend
Right.
to take the life, when he fired his gun.
That's more extreme, but yes, yeah.
I went very extreme,
You went
right away.
extreme. I was thinking of like, if you say something that you didn't think was offensive but did offend someone, then do you just apologize? Like, is it important to do you prioritize the other person's feelings over?
Well, the worse the impact is, right? Then the more we apply weight to the impact versus the intention, right? Like, for example,
Mm,
if it's something I said that I didn't mean to come across a certain way,
yeah.
that's something I think an apology could solve and we can understand via intention. I think we can deal with that a little bit more by focusing
Mm,
sometimes on the intention. But if you like took a life, if you hurt somebody irreparably, for example, you might not have intended something, but if you didn't foresee the consequences of your action, then that's neglect. And there's a reason we have something called like
mm,
criminal neglect.
right. And I want to,
Yeah.
can we hold on the extreme examples for a minute? I just want you to
Okay.
stay in the,
My mind goes extreme right away.
I know your mind goes extreme, and there are really good examples for the extreme, but I think sometimes things like, what about hurting someone's feelings? Like, it's not something you see. You have to basically take it by their word that they are offended by it.
Hmm.
What do you do? Do you stick to it? Oh, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. Or do you apologize? Do you have problems with that?
Sometimes not. It depends. It's very
Yeah,
contextual, right? I think that I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. I think you can
right.
state that wasn't your intention so the other person can understand. Because sometimes part of the problem is the other person might see a false intention in you
Right.
based on how it impacted them,
Okay.
right? It might help for them to know what your intention was.
Yeah.
And,
it-
I think that's helpful. That being
Yeah.
said, the kind thing to do is also to apologize for, causing harm to someone, even if it was unintentional,
Right.
and that goes a long way too.
Okay, great. And have you ever been offended by someone's words?
See, here's the thing. I generally I can't think of an instance where I have been. I'm very,
Mm,
part of my belief system here is I do believe the world would be a happier place if we judge people more by their intentions and their actions. Now, with the extreme examples notwithstanding.
right. But so, I mean, I've heard people, I was trying to think about this when we talked about this as a topic. I've had people say things that are meant as jokes, and because I know people think for some reason that I'm unoffendable. I don't know, or maybe that's my impression of what people think.
You can dish it, but you sure can't take it. No.
Yeah, yeah, they don't realize that I can't take it.
Call back.
Uh,
Yeah.
so when people don't yet realize that I can dish it but not take it, then I'll generally say something like, yeah, I'm not a fan of the. For example, I'll be like, I'm not into the Holocaust jokes. Please, no Holocaust jokes around me, or something like that. I think that's pretty fair to say. Do you relate to this at all, Josh? Or you're like, no, I have so many Holocaust jokes?
I don't mind. Again, when it comes to humor, I mean, maybe we'll do a whole episode on humor sometime, but
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect, kind of zone to talk about intention versus action here, because I think intention matters a lot when it comes to humor. For me personally,
Yes.
knowing what the intention is, or even what the person kind of already believes behind the joke they're making, makes a huge
Mm,
difference,
yes.
right? Because oftentimes those jokes, they might sound bad out of context, but they're really a commentary on how people are terrible or something. and it's not them. But for example, my favorite comedian, sorry if this offends anybody, but it's Louis CK. And I know he's had his fair share of controversy, right?
Mm.
But he's my favorite comedian. But part of what has always made me love him as a comedian was that despite all the horrible things he said, I kind of just, I got the impression he didn't believe any of this stuff. It wasn't,
Mm.
He in fact believed the opposite. That's why it was funny that he was saying it.
Right.
He was a good-hearted person saying all this stuff. But because of some of the stuff he's gotten in trouble with, now when he makes jokes relating to the things that he got in trouble for, it's much more uncomfortable.
Right.
Because I don't know that the intention is so pure anymore. It's like if you saw Bill Cosby make a bunch of jokes about, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying.
You'd be like, it's not.
Well, because his actions have tainted his intention.
His actions have.
Yeah.
At least in regards to certain types of jokes, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. And I mean, speaking of comedians, I was thinking of, the Borat movies as one example. Because initially when they came out, so I remember seeing it in theaters, and people didn't really know Sacha Baron Cohen that well, or like at least as high schoolers, we didn't really know of him very much. And I remember, that song like "Throw the Jew Down the Well," and I just remember, or like,
Yeah.
when he's joking with the old like Jewish couple, like, "Oh, give
Yeah.
them money," so that, yeah. So all these jokes, and I remember my friends, none of whom were Jewish, were looking over at me like, "Is this offensive?" And I'm like, "No, man,
Yeah.
like I was like, he's speaking in Hebrew for half this thing. Like,
Yeah, he is Jewish.
He is Jewish. He's like,
he's making a commentary on anti-Semitism by
right.
by actually showing how much anti-Semitism exists. He's baiting people into bringing that out.
Yeah.
But that's the context. You need to know the context and the intention. It matters.
Exactly. Yeah. So the context and the intention in humor for sure matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now it matters more to some people than others. We have to be honest, right?
Right. Because some people would still not appreciate that.
Yeah. I have friends even in my own house. There's one person in particular, I've gotten into some big discussions about this. She would say like, well, that's just not funny.
Mm.
It's just not funny. And that was just, it doesn't matter. It's a triggering thing to talk about. You don't joke about that.
Right.
I don't share that belief, but I also don't have like a traumatizing experience as being like triggered every time it's brought up either.
Right.
But I also don't believe in censoring humor. I believe you should probably avoid just that person, and that's that.
Yeah.
That's just my personal beliefs about that. But I can empathize with people who are triggered by things, and it doesn't matter necessarily the context for them.
For sure. I think that's a really good way of putting it. I agree. I understand the impulse to have those things that are only offensive and only upsetting to you just be quiet, but I value humor way too much to have that even be a viable option. It's like, well, you don't like them, you don't listen to them. I don't like Joe Rogan, so I just don't listen to him. It doesn't matter that he's everywhere. Not the best example, but
you know what though? I'm thinking about it, like people will say like what they said was horrible. Why would you find that funny? And I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's because it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like you find something funny because it's bad. It doesn't mean you believe it. It's because shock humor is a thing. It's being taken by surprise. But again, it still matters the context. If you see like a Nazi making jokes about throwing Jews down wells, it's very different.
Yeah, not funny anymore. Yeah.
It's not funny anymore because you're like, wait, he would throw Jews down wells. It's not he might be laughing about it, but that's not really a joke anymore, is it?
Yeah.
There's no like extra commentary or context there.
Yeah. And it's not like you can single people out and say like, wait, why are you laughing? Are you laughing because, are you laughing with them, or are you laughing because you misunderstood the joke? Like you can't.
I mean, some great comedians are good at that. They hear laughter after they say a joke and go, why did you laugh at that?
Yeah,
and they're making a great
true,
point. Yeah. Part of why they made the joke was to see who would laugh at what. A perfect example, by the way, of this thing was like, have you ever seen Louis C.K.'s "Of Course, But Maybe" skit?
Oh, I think I have. Yeah, a long time. I haven't watched him in a while, obviously.
Yeah, I won't go over the whole thing. If people know what I'm talking about, check that out. It's just a great way of like bringing the audience along with your kind of horrible thoughts and getting them to laugh, and then taking it farther.
Okay.
And then now they're a little uncomfortable, but it's like, well, you've already come this far with me. It's kind of pointing out people's own, also their hypocrisy.
Right.
Again, those inconsistencies.
Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting.
I could tell by how you just said that was very interesting. How interesting you thought that was.
No, I like it. You're
trying to segue.
I know I'm the person with the list this time. It's really bad. So I know I stopped you earlier from talking about really intense instances of intention versus action.
Mhm.
Now let's go into the really intense.
Okay.
So you'll be right at home here.
What do you mean by that, Aya? I'm offended.
Good. So I think it's kind of interesting because we're talking about intention versus action. Does intention matter? Legally, intention does matter in some cases. So if you
Hmm.
look at the differentiations we have between the degrees of murder, first degree, second
Yeah.
degree, and we've got manslaughter, the worst one is the one where you had all of the
You have to
intentions.
prove intent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing to prove. But you know what's interesting there? I think this is actually kind of, it's like, yeah, smart people have thought of this before us, right? Like
Oh yeah, we're not the
intent,
first. Yeah.
yeah, intent matters, but it matters on a scale. And literally the
Right.
degree to which we punish people shows that, right? It
Yeah.
matters. So we'll punish you less here, but you're
Yeah.
still getting punished. There's a certain,
Yeah, you still did the action, like the result matters the most.
yeah. I mean, one of the most tragic kind of examples for me always is like someone who hits somebody with their car.
Right.
Maybe they weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll take away alcohol stuff for a second because that's just pure neglect when you or whatever, I'm not seeing the consequences of your actions once you get into that car. But if you're driving and you weren't paying attention for a second and you ended up, hurting or even killing somebody, you know,
I'm not smiling because that. I'm smiling because you showed driving.
I was miming driving for some
Sorry.
reason.
I'm so sorry.
Driving the
Well, you're saying
bus.
something really serious, but like you're showing me how driving works. Oh, is this how it works? Thank you. Okay, I'm so sorry. Please continue with your super serious
It's good that
thing.
you described your intention there because otherwise I would just see you laughing at death.
I had to. Yeah, I had to describe because you saw me smiling. Listeners, I'm so sorry.
um,
All right.
well, as I was saying, if you
Uh-huh.
kill somebody
Now I'm laughing
unintentionally,
because I can't help
now, oh my God,
it. Your second.
you have the giggles at the worst possible time.
I can't. Okay.
Okay, so if you kill somebody at unintentionally while driving, does that mean, hey, we should take his intention into account? Well, yes, you should take the intention into account, but there's a few choices you made once you got into that vehicle, right? Is that you're kind of making a commitment to be attentive, be a good driver, and not
Yeah.
doing so is being neglectful. And to me, again, it's very upsetting because from my point of view, let's say somebody did lose a life, that life is gone and you can't get it back.
Yeah.
And then there's this other person whose life might be gone as well, in a sense, even though they're still here because of,
Right.
especially if they're a good person. I try to imagine sometimes, what if somebody did that to somebody who was close to me? Just the way my mind works, I can't imagine holding that against them for too long. Like, it's done,
Yeah.
it happened, it was horrible. We need to figure out how this won't happen again. But to me, it wouldn't be worth losing two lives. So I don't know. This is again
Yeah.
getting very dark and deep here, but
There is actually kind of a clear example of that maybe 4 or 5 years ago in London. There was a woman who accidentally drove into like the entrance of a Costco and killed like a kid and a mom or
uh,
a few kids. And it was just like her foot slipped, like she was wearing flip-flops or something, and her foot slipped
yeah,
onto the gas instead of the and um and she was dealing with the mental repercussions of that. Like, can you imagine having to deal with
yeah.
that?
You could be the nicest person in the world and do that
Yeah,
by accident.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
also, an accident is an accident. We should keep that in
Yes. Yeah.
mind. And so, I don't know, for me, the intention really, really does matter there, even though the impact is huge. It doesn't mean that but again, it's not like we're saying intention versus action. Is it not? It's not one or the other. You
Right.
can recognize the impact and deal with that, and also recognize the intention. And sometimes it's just messy in the
Yeah.
end, right?
Yeah. It's an issue because we always put verses, but then it's like,
Well, this to me makes more sense to put verses because there really is often these are at odds more,
mm,
but it doesn't mean that we don't kind of address both of those things. Just like you're saying, when it comes to criminal law or whatever,
right.
you factor intent into it, but that doesn't negate the action entirely. It might just
Right.
I don't minimize, but it like
Kind of tempers it.
it puts it into a different context, a different light, and that helps everyone understand better, right?
Yeah.
So Yeah,
Yeah.
this is heavy stuff.
Yeah, this
When
got
you
really
look
heavy.
at that.
Yeah, what do you think of the quote, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions"? I feel like I'm putting you on the spot a lot today.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you all these questions back. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I mean, that is such a general thing. Sometimes that is the case.
Yeah.
And that's why that quote exists. There are people who had good intentions and somehow ended up in a very bad place.
Hmm.
But there's so many other factors usually there.
Yeah.
It's not like the good intentions brought them to hell. It's that
Okay.
they started something with good intentions, and then some other stuff started, factoring in as well.
So do you think that's a useful is that a useful quote? Or should we just toss it aside?
It's a useful quote in the sense that people should remember that intentions are not all that matter. Like, just
Mm,
having good intentions
is not
is not
enough.
enough.
Right.
And I mean, it's important to recognize intention. I think part of I used to struggle with this too when I did upset somebody, and I would always be like, well, that wasn't my intention.
Yeah.
And and they'd say, yeah, but this is what happened.
Right.
This is what you did, action, and this was the impact, the consequence.
Yeah.
And that matters too.
Mhm.
Now, where I struggle sometimes is when it's subjective, when like I could do the same action
Mm,
with one person and have one result, and I do it with, have and with, the same intention and action with somebody else and have a different impact.
right.
And so therefore I start to, it's like, well, how I might not have known that it would impact somebody a certain way. And therefore I think in that point, that's not all on me. Now, the more nuanced thing to understand there is, okay, if you do it once, that's one thing, right? Then I can argue that. If I do it over and over again, and I should already know how something affects somebody, then it is on me,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So, then it's just neglectful again.
Yes. Right.
So
And that's no longer accidental, really.
it means that you're not putting thought into the consequences. And
Right.
it is important for us to do that. We have to try to see the consequences of our actions. Literally,
Mm,
people who can't see the consequences of their actions, that's disordered. Like, so if you're
right.
capable of that, you have to exercise that. You have to practice that,
Mm,
because then if you're not, that is neglect. And it's not just about your intention there. I don't know. What do you
right.
think? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I only wanted to know about your thoughts on it.
Oh, Ryan.
I just had a quote and I thought I'd see what you thought. Yeah, I don't know. What do I think of it? I mean, I think it's a fun thing to say to people when they're like, "Well, I didn't mean," or "I didn't." It's like, well, nobody gives a shit what you meant when this is what actually happened.
Do you say that sometimes though to people? Are you one of those people who's like, well, it doesn't matter what you meant? I would never say to somebody, it doesn't matter what you meant.
No, I wouldn't either. I'd be
No,
like,
but
I
there are people
get
who said
that.
that to
It's
me. Like, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
oh, I think
And
it
that
does
bothers
matter.
me to a degree. Like if also it's a good way to, if all that's all they have to say. I get that it mattered. I get what you
Mhm.
intended. And I understand that
Yeah,
this is what happened. And
right.
then it leaves the room for me to also go like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What can I do to rectify this?
No, you're right. I would never say it doesn't matter because I would be like,
Because then it puts
well,
them on the defensive. It puts people on the defense.
it puts them on the defensive. And if someone really does have good intentions, then there's no reason to deny that. Like, there's no reason to kind of give someone a hard time when they really did have good intentions. Imagine if all the people with good intentions aren't able to, like, how frustrating that must be to have good intentions and continually mean to do something good and be
Hmm.
shut down and not even just shut down but ignored, like not even having your intentions taken into account. I'm sure that's contributed to lots of people's anger. I'd be angry
Yeah.
if that's like when you're a kid and you feel like you're not even allowed to defend yourself, right? Like at least
Yeah.
I don't know, like if we want the world to be a better place, we should I don't know, we should want at least the first step is for people to have good intentions. And if they do have good intentions, they'll probably also listen to you eventually. But you have to validate them first. Like, yes, I understand that
Yeah.
you meant well and thank you for meaning well, but like you need to do this shit.
Hmm. So basically, so we want to say the goal is for intent to match action.
Yes.
So that's the goal first of all. So how do we get there? Do you think, like, how do we get intent to match action in somebody where that's not happening continuously?
How should I know? What is this? What am I supposed to
Dr.
solve the
Ishai.
world's problems? God damn it. How do we get them to let's
Well, I think you answered that a little bit already, right? one, you have to be willing to listen. If somebody tells you afterwards that your intent is not matching your action, you have to listen to them,
Right.
right? You have to be aware that there's something.
Yeah.
It really comes down to, we talked about this the last episode, but self-awareness.
It's true, actually. Yeah, that would being aware of how,
You come off and
yeah, because it's almost like you don't really know how you look until, okay, I'm gonna make an analogy.
Mhm.
I don't know why I needed to prepare you.
I love your analogies.
I
Let's
feel
go.
like,
Let's make this. Let's hear this like 80% their analogy, and then the 20% you stumble to the end. Let's do it.
well, now you've made me self-conscious about
No,
it,
no, it's
but
gonna be great.
I feel like it's the difference between putting your makeup on blind and having a mirror. So, like, you can
Hmm.
put on makeup and be like, okay, I know that foundation goes here, I know that blush goes here, and lipstick goes here. But it's not until you look in the mirror that you
Hmm.
see if you follow the lines correctly or if it actually looks good.
If your intention matched your action,
If your intention matched your action. Maybe that's a terrible example or
that was a
analogy.
fantastic example. That was so
Was it?
good. That was like your
Oh,
best one
okay.
yet.
What?
I actually prefer it when it's not quite there because it's funnier.
Uh-huh. But that one was there?
That was a good one. That was there. Yeah,
Oh,
totally.
wow. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, and the mirror is your self-awareness, but it's also sometimes other people, right? You don't always
Exactly.
have
Well,
the,
that helps give you self-awareness.
yeah. And you need good lighting.
Yeah.
So now I'm running with it because you told me it's
But
good.
you have to accept it from others, right? That's the whole point. Other
Right.
people telling you it is not the self-awareness, it's you listening to that,
Right.
right? Whether you see yourself in, the mirror, you can either self-reflect and realize it on your own to some degree,
Yeah.
or you can get some help from others.
Yeah.
But that is important to listen. Okay, so like I said, my intention might have been good in one case and I didn't come off the way I wanted to one individual, and I
Mm.
was maybe mistaken because it came off better, at least I thought so, to somebody else. Okay, but now they told me this, now I'm aware of how I come off, at least to them.
Yeah.
It's my job to not, like, it's easy to kind of buckle down, on what you believe
Mm.
and kind of stick with it and be like, well, they should change, right? This is my intention. They need to take it the way that I meant it. And that's not necessarily the best course of action.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like the empathetic response.
It's not empathetic. Yeah.
I think all of us have been on the receiving side of emotional pain. Like we all know what
Yeah.
it feels like to be hurt. And whether your intentions are good or not, I think
Yeah.
the important thing is to realize that that's how the person feels.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean that your intentions don't matter. It just means that it's good to prioritize people's feelings. I feel like we've been too on topic. This
But too much.
okay, go ahead.
Let me
Go
ask
ahead.
you to keep it even more on topic.
Woo.
Do you believe there are cases though where people are being too sensitive and need to, like, I don't know, lighten up a little bit? Like maybe there is a bit,
Mm,
like maybe it is on the person sometimes who's being, let's say, offended, or the action is being seen as negative by them. Like, are there cases where that is the case, do you think, and they need to just, they're the ones who need to change a little bit, not the person who had the good intention and the possibly
um,
decent action?
I think it's really hard to measure. It depends. So I don't think that you can tell anyone that they're too sensitive. I have like an aversion to that
Yeah.
idea, even because I mean I've been told not in the case of like humor or offensivity,
Yeah.
because in that case I'm not that easily offended, but in general, I think being told that you're too sensitive is very
That's
hurtful.
triggering in itself, right?
Yeah, it also denies their, subjective reality, what they're dealing with. It's
Mhm.
denying someone's experience. So I don't think you can tell someone you need to deal with this. This is your problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but I think that's shitty. It's just not being a nice person.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here a little bit. Like, what if,
No, no, I appreciate it. I like it. Yeah.
but what if someone's subjective reality really is just so far removed from reality that they need to get a little bit of self-awareness about that? And
Mm,
even though it's not denying the reality, but it's like putting the onus on them a little bit to
yeah.
maybe remove themselves from situations where that's affecting them, or kind of putting the onus not on the other person constantly, is what I'm saying, or the other party.
Yeah. I think a way to look at that is not to tell them what they need to do or what they should do, but maybe to say something like it would be easier to live in the world if you were able to deal with this to some extent on your own. Like if you're going to be triggered by everything that you see and you can't control those things. Not everything is within your control.
Yeah.
You can't ignore, there's only so much that you can filter
Hmm.
what you're going to see in the world. So, I mean, we all have to deal with this to an extent.
I mean, that doesn't that come down to a little bit how the society, there's always kind of a question of how much should we cater to people's needs and how much do they have to kind of do for themselves. There's like this balance that's always,
Mm,
good old example, like, all right, people are in wheelchairs, we have ramps for them. We understand this is a need that people have. And okay, so we listen to the needs of people in society and we try to have as inclusive
mm,
society as we can. But I'd wage that it's kind of impossible to be 100% inclusive, right? Like we can't cater to everyone's very specific particular needs. And some people have to, I mean, like, okay, going back to this comedian example, if you're being offended by something a comedian said, especially if this is their space, I think this is part of where it matters. If someone's infringing on your space,
mm,
then I think the onus is more on them.
right.
But if you have the ability to just not listen to that comedian or something, I
Yes.
wouldn't be going after them going, you're offending me, you're offending me, you're offending me
Yeah.
so much. Like, don't listen to them then.
Those are super different examples in my view, but I
Yeah.
agree. I agree on the comedian side, of course. I don't totally understand the need to go around silencing people that are offending you. Because if it's pretty easy to not listen, just don't listen. Like you don't have to. There are lots of things I don't like that I just don't listen to, or there are things that upset me that I just don't watch.
You're not talking about the comedian stuff. Now you said the other.
Yeah, I'm talking about the comedian stuff.
Oh, you're talking about comedian. So you agree with that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So the other thing though, what's the thing you don't agree with there?
Okay, you know what? I don't disagree with it. I just have a hard time. I think that's just a difficult place because it's in some ways it's just so unfair.
Like, what did I mean when I said you can't be 100% inclusive?
Well, yeah, you can't be 100%
When
inclusive,
I say that, I'm not saying not to be
but you
inclusive.
should try.
Yes, you should try to be inclusive.
You should try. You might fail, but you should continue to
Yeah.
try to make everything as accessible as possible. But maybe that's too easy of an answer. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. So I guess we're not being specific with what we're saying here. So even me
Right.
just saying you should try to be, you can't be 100% inclusive. Somebody's hearing that going, what are you saying?
Yeah, yeah. So I think maybe that's what I'm like,
They're hearing me
wait,
say that. They're going, are you saying we can't be inclusive of trans people? No, that's not what I'm
right.
saying. I think we should, I think we should be as inclusive as possible. But I do think there's I'm thinking when it's more subjective and it's also something somebody can avoid.
Mm,
I think that's where the divide happens for me a little bit. If you come into somebody else's space and expect them to cater to you. Now, I'm not talking about public space. I'm talking about into somebody else's space.
right.
It's different than them being also, if they're forced to be in your space, then they should be catering to you a little bit more, right? If they have to be subject to you.
Mm,
If I'm living in a house with someone and they're going to see me all the time, yeah, I should really try to cater to the people in my house more
yeah.
and be empathetic to their needs. If I don't live in their house, I don't have to change how I am in my house necessarily.
Right. And they shouldn't be like coming into your room and being like, I hate
Exactly.
this book you have in your closet. It all comes back to going into people's closet. I find this book offensive. I can't have it even in this house. That's way too
Yeah.
aggressive.
Speaking of books.
Huh. I was gonna say, speaking of offending people.
Oh.
No, no. Speaking of books, what, Josh?
No. You do the segues. You're the
No, no, you
segue
do the
queen.
segue because my segue sucked.
You're the
Do it.
segue
Do
queen.
it. Do it. I'm not. I've
You
been
are.
demoted. I've been
Nope.
demoted to
I'm
segue
the only one who can promote or demote
prince.
you.
That's fucking bullshit. As queen, I demote you from that honor.
Okay, so you recognize it. Great.
Whatever. So speaking of offending people, I did want to mention this, although I don't know why or if I still should, but the J.K. Rowling case is kind of a big example of this, right?
Yes,
Uh,
it is. And she's actually my favorite author.
yeah, she's definitely one of mine. And
Yeah.
I really looked up to her and I have like some reservations now. I can still appreciate her writing and all of that, but it is a little bit problematic. So, okay, maybe I'll give some background for anyone who doesn't know. I guess she made some controversial tweets in June of 2020. She was kind of responding to something that referred to people who menstruate instead of just saying women. She kind of made a joke about it. That's how it started. And it,
Didn't she say like I think they're called something, right? Wimbin?
yeah, classic
Or
humor.
she just started like kind of being sarcastic or whatever.
Yeah, and I think so the main issue really with what happened, and then okay, and then it happened like there was a lot of backlash and
Yeah, they're saying she's being anti-trans or transphobic.
transphobic, right? And she was referred to as a TERF, so that's a trans exclusionary radical feminist. And she responded with an essay
Mhm.
where she talked about her own experiences and how she felt that she needed women as a separate designation
Feel safer.
to feel safer, to describe her own experiences as a victim of domestic abuse. And she talks about her own work with kids and with women and all of that stuff. And honestly, I really don't doubt that her intentions are good and that she means well. But overall, doubling down instead of just apologizing and saying like I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Like,
I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like,
okay.
I think I think you and I can both agree her intentions were not bad. And she's clearly, I don't think she's not a bad person. I mean,
No.
there's other things she's done. She's done a lot of good. She's been very
Yeah, she's
philanthropic.
yeah,
I know she believes herself to be a good person, of course.
for sure.
And I have always seen her as a good person. And this doesn't change personally my view of her as a good person. I don't want to taint, it's not like, oh, you're a bad person
I
now.
don't think she's a bad person.
And part of that is because this is born out of, from her mind, at least, good intentions.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you and I talking about this, we're not trans, we're not on the receiving end of this. So, take this as you will. We
Yeah, neither of
recognize
us
that we're,
is
yeah, we can't have the full conversation, right? But, that being said, her intentions, I think, were good, but that's only, she has to recognize the impact, I think.
yes.
Now, she can still, this is where it's tricky. She feels she's like fighting a battle. I think she
Yeah.
feels like there's some like battle to be won here, and maybe it's being lost, and she's standing up for women. That's what she believes. She's standing up for women and safe spaces for women, both by definition and,
Yeah.
in reality, right? I understand. Again, this is empathizing, right? I understand where she's coming from. I remember reading this and going, okay, I see what she means, where she's coming
Yeah.
from, but she is kind of ignoring the impact she's having. And I think just addressing that impact would have
Right.
gone so much further.
Yeah.
And not, not I've got trans friends, the old,
Yeah, I hate that.
you
That's such
know,
a
she
yeah.
kind of did that because, here's, the facts are trans people have been suffering even recently from a lot of hate. If anything, they're probably feel some of the like least safe
Yeah.
amongst people right now. And these are just, things to consider. So when someone of her stature, of her power makes these comments, it holds a lot of weight. And I'm sure she knows that's why she's putting it out there to win her battle. But, that does kind of mean that she's ignoring the consequence and the impact on the other
Mm.
side here. And I think she could have just gone a long way by at least addressing that and trying to have a dialogue instead of like being like, I get this, I understand, I know my answer, even if she still thinks she's right.
Right.
Just the way she went about that, I think.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
gets even I agree, and I think it gets even more complicated when you think about the fact that a lot of what she's battling too is the fact that she's been attacked for her comments. And she's like, I should be able to say
She's getting defensive.
she's getting very defensive. And it's like, well, you unfortunately that's kind of part of what comes with that much fame is anything you say affects a lot of people. So
Exactly.
your freedom of speech is kind of it's not that it's restricted, but it
Mhm.
has such an impact that maybe it matters less what you want to do and matters more what the impact is on people.
Yeah. Would you say that your action or your impact matters more the more power that you have?
I mean, it's hard to say yes or no, but I think that it's something to be aware of when you have millions of followers. Like, I mean, in her case, it's also that there are generations of kids who were brought up on her books, and like Harry Potter is so important to so many people.
And it's not
And
just
like,
important because people like it. It's important because it has great messages. It really
oh,
does
for
have a
sure.
positive impact, I would say, on the
Yeah.
world. And it's all, inclusivity. People
Yeah,
pointed out that her books seem to be saying almost a different message than her. At least it sounds like that to people, right?
for sure. And I mean again, I really don't think her intention
Yes.
is against anyone. I think it's just her own And I think like she's just angry that she can't just say what she believes and that she can't just defend her own experiences without being attacked.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But it also makes sense that someone who has grown up with all the, someone who's grown up with, I don't know, like someone who has dealt with all the discrimination of being trans, hearing that from like a hero of theirs, I
Hmm.
can't even imagine how that feels. Really, I can't. Like it was cringy to read parts of her essay.
Yeah. Yeah. But on the other hand, like, what she was saying, it's not like she was like, trans people suck. Like, in her
No,
mind,
but
again, the stuff she was saying was not that's why she wrote it. If she
yeah,
thought
no,
that it was, she wouldn't have. So that's what again, intention versus action or impact is. This is a perfect example because
yeah.
in her mind, she's not fighting against trans people. She's fighting for safe space for women in a sense.
Right, but she is smart enough to realize that those overlap. Like I think she's blinded by her own mission in a way and
Maybe
doesn't see how.
exactly blinded, meaning she's not listening
Yeah,
to people in a sense. Again, I don't think listening necessarily means changing what she wants for, she doesn't need to necessarily give that up when she listens to the needs of others.
right.
Having a dialogue and allow also means other people will listen to your concerns a little bit more freely if you are a
Yes.
little bit more open yourself. But kind of putting your foot down and doubling down,
Yeah.
especially, like, let's be honest, the way she kind of started everything wasn't with this letter. It was with these kind of sarcastic,
Yeah.
almost like kind of, I don't know, had some attitude in the way
Yeah.
she wrote these things. It wasn't with kindness, we'll put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
She was so sure of what she was saying that she was being kind of cocky about it. It's so weird to say
That's
this
true.
because, again, she is clearly an intelligent person. And again, I want to reiterate that I think she's a good person.
Yeah, I think
And
so too.
it,
Yeah.
it breaks my heart to see the other way, people going, I can't even read Harry Potter anymore because of her. And oh, that breaks my heart to hear that because it's like, she's not Hitler. Like, she's not out to hurt people. And I think that
Yeah.
intention does matter in that regard. And again, I just personally, I don't want to talk about cancel culture or whatever and all that stuff, but going out, the idea of
We
like,
can a little.
well, I don't like the idea of trying to cancel her
No, me
or
neither.
people like her. I like the idea of trying to have a dialogue still and trying to have
Yeah.
that conversation because she isn't this person that can't be. I don't believe she's somebody who you can't have a conversation with. Just because someone
Yeah.
upset you with what they said doesn't mean you can't. Even if you think the onus is on them to suddenly figure it out. I'm gonna like cancel them until then.
Yeah.
I'd rather not put hateful rhetoric back in order to, even if you're, again, doesn't matter who's right.
No, it really doesn't. And I think it's like having an argument where like it's the difference between having a discussion and just being like la la la, la, and one person just covering their ears and being like, I
Mhm.
can't even listen to you. It's like I understand the need, like sometimes you just can't listen to the shit that someone's saying,
Yeah.
but it's also really not what's the word, like helpful. It's not productive. It's very not productive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But I do believe that, like, I guess you said you weren't sure of this, but the more I think about it, like, again, if you have a position of power, I do understand the argument that it's up to, we should recognize, and also the person in the position of power, it's kind of on them to recognize that their actions have more weight than their intentions.
yeah.
I mean, everybody's, you can argue that with anybody. Maybe me in
Yeah,
my
that's
house,
a
my
good,
actions
yeah.
have more weight than my intentions, but
Right.
somebody with millions of followers and tons of money and a
Mm,
position of, high up there, yeah, they have, it's like a bigger responsibility. Like, more responsibility comes with more power. So I think that then I saw, was it recently there was this, is it a singer? People are gonna, people who know this better are gonna be,
are we gonna sound super old right now? Yeah.
no,
Let's hear it.
okay. Have you heard of this singer, Demi Lovato?
Yes, Demi Lovato. She's a singer.
Yeah, so I know there's people out there going, what do you mean have you heard of her? She's like
Yeah,
huge.
I think
All
everybody's
right.
heard that name. Yeah.
Okay, I don't really know much
Even
about
I've heard
Demi.
of her.
Yeah, I
So
don't know much about this person, but I just saw this little controversy that happened recently.
I've heard of Semi Lovato, not Demi Lovato.
Are you making a joke?
It was a really bad joke.
Oh, okay.
Are you making a joke?
And you have to
Never
keep
mind.
that
I'm not
terrible
keeping
joke
it. No, I get to keep.
in
I get
there.
to tell whatever I
No,
want.
keep it in there. So Demi Lovato, apparently, I think it was on her Instagram or on her social media,
Mhm.
she called out some either ice cream or frozen yogurt shop for having for having sugar-free options. She thought they shouldn't for some reason.
What?
I probably should have researched this more.
Yeah, probably.
But from what I from what I understand, yeah, she called them out, but
And they subsequently went out of business, or?
well, no, I think they're still in business.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it could have, maybe, I don't know how badly it damaged their business or if it did, but people were very, very upset with her because of the way she called them out. Again, I
Mm.
don't know. I'm not actually sure what it is she was calling out. That sounds kind of ridiculous to call someone out for having sugar-free options. I think that's a good thing. But from what I understand, she was upset about these sugar-free or diet options being triggering to people in some way.
Yeah.
And okay, whether or not you agree with that, I don't think I agree with that at all. But whether or not you agree with that, it's different than just like some random person going on Yelp
Mm.
and leaving a review of a place for such a reason. She has
Yeah.
millions of followers again. She has much more power. And therefore, regardless of her intention, her action matters so much more.
Yeah.
Because the impact is potentially so much greater, right? She could put this small business out of business
Yeah.
just with her words alone. So her actions, in a sense, matter more.
Or maybe they got more attention now, and everyone's gonna go there just to see,
I mean, this might be the
because they know
reverse
Demi
kind of
Lovato.
thing,
Yeah, no, but
but
that's
that's
okay.
because
It's not the
people
point.
part of that is because people maybe recognize that, but it's definitely caused a bigger, fuss. Like, for example, police aren't just somebody defending themselves with a gun; they have a position of power, so their actions matter more. There are people here walking around in the States who have a gun, and if they feel threatened, they might use it, whatever you think of that. But, we hold a police officer, there's these stand your ground laws and whatnot, right? But we hold police officers to a much higher standard because, their position of power, what they're trained in.
I don't know how I feel about this analogy. I don't know that this is an equivalent analogy, but
Oh, and I'm not necessarily making it a specifically equivalent analogy to Demi Lovato, but I still think it's another example of having power
mm,
or having more power, meaning that your actions or your impact matter more,
mm.
right? So I'm just taking it to the next extreme.
I see.
So like, okay,
Okay.
police, next extreme here, right? They have more power than your average citizen, right? And they
Mm.
have weapons. They have more power both physically and figuratively.
Yeah. Is it also the difference between? So do you remember that there was a reporter talking to Donald Trump, and she was saying how he's not just some crazy uncle on Twitter. He's the president of the United States.
Exactly. This is a
Yeah.
perfect example. Again, we keep going up. We're going higher in the.
Just higher and higher. Yeah.
No, that's a perfect example because yes,
Thanks.
suddenly, again, if it's your crazy uncle saying this stuff on Twitter, saying a bunch of,
It's like whatever.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even like whatever. We have problems with your crazy uncle saying
Yeah.
racist stuff on Twitter.
Yeah.
But if the president of the United States is saying that, it can rally all kinds of people who defer to your authority
Right.
to follow you in what you are saying and what you believe, whether
Yeah.
or not he even believes in it. He's just saying this stuff sometimes.
Yeah. I believe that.
And he has so much power, and therefore whatever his intention was kind of pales in comparison to the impact and the action.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. You're the one who brought up that.
I mean, it's great that you explained exactly what I wanted to explain, but like better than I was just like, this is an example, and then you explained it perfectly.
I have a question though for you. Have you ever?
Oh.
You kind of been asking me this. I want to know. Do you have any examples, maybe in a relationship or something, where like this intention versus action thing was a real issue for you, whether you were on the receiving end or you were the perpetrator?
I have a hard time thinking of examples.
You said you can be offended sometimes more easily than people realize. Has someone offended you before and you had to respond to them saying that was not my intention?
I can't think of an example exactly, sorry. But as long as my feelings aren't totally dismissed, because I think I have been told before, like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter that you feel that way because that's not what I meant. I've been told that in a relationship, for example. And it's like, well, it still kind of matters how I feel. And I
it
think
should matter more to someone in a relationship, you'd think, right?
One would think so. Yeah.
Because you're much more attuned. That's part of being in a relationship. It's not just the closer you are to someone, would you say, then
Yeah.
yeah, your impact, especially your impact really matters.
Ideally. Yeah. Yeah, actually that's a good point, cuz like if anyone cares what the impact is, like if anyone should care how you feel regardless of how logical your reaction may seem to them, if anyone should care, it's the person you're in an
Yeah.
intimate relationship with.
Yeah, you know what I just realized, because I was just talking about power in that regard. Like we're
Mm.
talking about power over people in general, but when you're in a relationship, suddenly you might as well be the president and the first lady.
Oh
You know what I mean?
yeah.
You guys are that the amount of power you have in regards to the other person in that sense is much greater because of the way that you can affect how they feel because they
Yeah.
care so much more about every little thing you do and think and all of that. So the obviously the impact, the actions matter more. And that's why you probably end up in a lot of conversations about what you meant. And I
Yeah.
find myself doing that in my relationship still now, like, oh, this is oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that.
Mm.
I meant this. And oh, okay, and I mean, we can talk about I was just thinking about it, what factors into a lot of this stuff are people's biases, right? They
Yeah.
have like we talked about confirmation bias before,
Mhm.
right? Which is
Yeah, so I mean, if you already believe something, you basically just look for the one thing that confirms what you believe and then don't
yeah.
consider anything else.
So that might be why somebody else, on the other person, they might have certain biases already, like confirmation. There's
Yeah.
confirmation bias. There's other types of biases too. There's
There's hindsight bias, there's unconscious, implicit bias.
implicit bias. Yeah. All these biases
Yeah, many
that
biases.
one can have. But basically, that would lead somebody to not recognize, they actually misconstrue your intention.
Mm.
And I think that happens often the most in relationships,
Hmm.
right? Right. Where somebody you might have, again, a certain intention and your partner has some sort of, bias based on their experiences in the past. And they're
Right.
not actually seeing your action for the way it was intended. So how do you solve that? Again,
Empathy?
communication,
Oh.
empathy. Listen, you're right. Empathy is what I was getting to.
Empathy and communication.
Empathy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, communication helps with
with
empathy, I would
empathy.
say.
That's so funny. And I think, yeah,
Yeah.
and I really like what you said about it mattering more from like the person that you're in a relationship with than the president of whatever, or Demi Lovato. Like, because, yeah, because you're in such a vulnerable position already that like you're supposed to be able to have your defenses down when you're around that person. You shouldn't have to walk around with like a suit of armor on. It's fine. I understand
Yeah.
going out into the world with your walls up and being prepared to have people say things that are going to upset you, but you're supposed to be sensitive in those relationships.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is we want to be around people often who we feel like we're all on the same wavelength. When I say something, I'm gonna get my best friend back home. Like the best part of our friendship is I couldn't ever offend him because he always knew what I meant.
Right.
He always knew.
Yeah, I love people like that.
He just never misconstrued me and I never misconstrued him. We just understood each other so well. And that to me was a template like of what I want with others.
Right.
I want us to all to understand each other well enough that it's just not possible. Like after
Mm.
communicating, even with this person in my house that I've had sometimes some, I don't want to say arguments or, we've had some squabbles over this, again, intention versus action sort of thing.
Mm.
Once we understood each other better, both of us could kind of step back and be like, all right, I get the other person now. I know what I should or shouldn't say. And if I did happen, let's say, to say something I shouldn't have, she can be like, okay, I get what he intended now, even though,
Yeah.
and I see that now, even though I might not like the action or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that communication is so, so important.
Yeah. And I like your description of how your relationship with your best friend is, because that's when you can really be yourself. And I mean, you can express yourself without having to censor, like you just get to be and know
Yeah.
that people understand you. I mean, that's wonderful. That's human interaction at its best.
That's amazing. That's what we want. Cause again, you get that walking on eggshells. With some people, right? You
For
understand
sure. Yeah.
where you think they're gonna misconstrue your
Yeah.
intention more. You start to walk on eggshells a little more around them, or they might
Mm.
do that with you. And it's kind of it's more anxiety inducing.
Yeah. And it's just, I think that's a lot of what makes, for me, like a lot of what makes social interactions difficult is being afraid of how people might construe my,
your intention.
yeah, how people might
Yeah.
take things. And I think I told a story example before about that girl who thought that I was laughing at her. And at a later
Yeah,
party,
that's a perfect example of intention versus action.
yeah, I realized that later. At a later party, she confronted me very aggressively. Except she didn't confront me. She confronted my friend Adriana, actually, who
Yeah.
was mentioned earlier. She confronted Adriana thinking she was me. And instead of just apologizing, which is what I should have done, I was just like, I don't want to engage with this, and I kind of just hid. But
Mm,
don't hide. It's better to, because then the whole time you're
yeah.
just sitting there uncomfortable. It breeds a lot of resentment and anger between
Yeah.
people. Unless she was about to be, I thought she looked like she was about to get violent, and I was like, Adriana can take
Well,
this.
I was gonna
I
say
cannot.
if something is a there's we're talking about with healthy people, relationships, all that sort
Right.
of stuff. Obviously, there are people out there they can tell you they have a great intention, but if they continuously have a very terrible action,
Yeah.
right, then that's toxic.
Wait, am
And
I
that's
that person in that story?
no, you're not. No, you're not. There's nothing. I'm not saying this is
Is
an
the other
example of
girl?
it.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
not saying this.
gotcha.
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know. I'm just saying there are examples of toxic situations,
Right.
and it's easy sometimes to also hear from somebody like, "Oh, that wasn't my intention," over and over and
Yeah.
over and over
Yeah.
again. And maybe these two people just don't line up, and that's the explanation. But maybe this other person doesn't see the consequences of their actions or is not empathizing. It usually
Right.
comes down to them not empathizing, and therefore it's toxic. And while I do feel that it's really important to trying to judge in general by people's intentions when it's toxic, then you have to just see the reality for what it is, right?
No.
See the actions. That's the reality. And you have to kind of get out of that situation.
Yeah.
Although going back to like that story I told about Oscar at the beginning, and
Right.
part of me wanting to get to like, I don't know, I said I want to go in too fast with people and get to the
Yeah.
deep stuff. Part of that I think comes from me not wanting to have those walk on eggshell moments with people where we don't know. I want to find out that
Oh,
stuff. I want to find out that stuff fast. I want to find it out as soon as possible so
you're
we can
very
be real.
impatient.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to be real with people. I want them to,
Yeah.
even if it's uncomfortable at first, like I want them to know me, my sense of humor, what I believe. I want to find out what they believe and again, catch
Yeah.
those inconsistencies. Otherwise, I don't know how to respond. I
Yeah.
want to catch all that stuff early so that it can be like it is with my best friend where we just
Right.
know each other so well that we don't have that kind of non-alignment between intention and action.
Hmm. Are we at that point yet, Josh?
I was actually going to ask you that. It's funny.
Oh,
That's how aligned we are. I was actually going to ask you, but I was
well,
like,
I was wondering, do you have to walk on eggshells around me?
no. I was going to say, I actually feel even from part of the reason I think you and I started. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but part
Huh.
of the reason. By the way, it's something I love to say. You can tell me if I'm wrong because I think that really helps
Oh, and I will.
help set the stage for in case those two things don't align.
Okay.
But I think I do believe right from I don't say the start, not like in preschool, but I mean when we started like becoming friends again, I think that part of that was we were pretty well aligned. We had that certain sense of I don't know. I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells with you.
Yeah, it does feel like a free discussion. Like I don't worry about what you're gonna think.
You don't worry about offending me
I've
generally.
never worried about what you will think of me.
There was like that one time you thought you upset me. Remember that or
Oh my
something?
God, that was different because I thought I had gone too far and somehow upset you, and I was so worried about it. I still think I might have, and that
No,
you're kind of brushing it under the rug. And
I'm telling
yeah.
you, like if something did bother me, also I would just be communicative about it. What bothers me
Oh, good.
sometimes with people is that it upsets them, and then you find out like a month later, and it's
Right.
like, what? I wasn't prepared to deal with this now. Like I thought we were good for an entire month, and you were holding resentment. Like I'm not going to do that to others. Do
Right.
unto others as you would have
Yeah.
done unto you. I don't want people to do that to me, so I don't do it to others. I
Mm,
will not hold a resentment towards somebody for both of our sakes,
right. That's good.
right?
I think that's good. No resentment, guys.
Like
Just
deal with it.
be honest. Be straightforward.
Yeah. If you don't understand someone's intention, find out fast.
Yeah.
If their action bothered you, tell them soon, right? Don't tell them later.
So it's a good thing that I instantly get mad at you when something you do pisses me off. Is that good?
It depends if it's something that's going to remain with you and you're going to get mad later, or if you feel like maybe if you you know what I mean, if you
Okay.
don't get mad
Okay.
right away.
Okay.
I'm giving you too logical an answer to this.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
What about you, Aya? How do you feel?
Yeah, I don't feel like I need to walk on eggshells at all. Unless we were doing that as an activity and we had all the, as we mentioned.
Oh my gosh, you and the eggshell walking
I think
being literal. That's
that's a
like an episode
callback
like
to like
one
episode
flashback.
2.
Is it
Is it
two?
episode 1? I liked
I
that
don't know.
one.
It's like right at the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like you're less into this, but I found it entertaining as an idea that people would walk on eggshells for fun. But yeah, no, I feel very comfortable expressing myself, which probably helps a lot. Less so when we're broadcasting the entire thing. I do feel like I walk on eggshells a little bit, which probably, you know, censors me a bit, but that's probably for the best.
We're better with each other than we are with like the public.
Right. It helps a bit that I have you to talk to. If I were just talking into a microphone to the public, I'd have a hard time.
You know, so it's interesting to kind of come full circle here. You know how I talked about that trip I was on this weekend
Yeah.
with Oscar, the guy I talked about, also my friend Andrew, who I live with, and my girlfriend. And again, it was a great trip, but really we had like one issue that kind of kept popping up on this trip. And like there's always something when you go on a trip with a bunch of people, there's like something.
Yeah.
And this one is it's kind of like funny, like from a distance.
Okay.
Because basically, whenever let's say we were talking about going to get food,
Yeah.
like 2 to 3 out of the 4 people constantly are trying to kind of feel what the other person really wants or isn't saying, not just about food, but let's say wherever we're going. So people are making decisions not based on what they want, but what they think other people want.
Why can't everybody just say what they want?
Exactly. That's my thing. So one of the things I do is I always just tell people what I want.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm thinking ahead. Like, or I said this at one point to my girlfriend. I said, or if you are going to cater to somebody else and not do what you want, never tell them what you really wanted. You have to.
Oh, that's true.
Otherwise, you're just setting up guilt for later.
Yeah.
You know, if you say, yeah, I just went with what you wanted at the time, but I really didn't want to, and you tell them
Well,
that later.
that's problematic.
Yes. So we had like this whole case of like everybody having these like really good intentions on this trip of like trying to, but instead, I remember we literally got to this one restaurant at one point,
and like nobody actually wanted to go.
And oh my God, it turned out, yeah, nobody there. Everybody was like, I went here because I thought that you wanted to, and I went here because I thought you wanted to. And I actually wanted to go there, but I was in the I was in the bathroom when I thought they had already ordered. So I came out and I quickly like ordered, and they're like, oh, we haven't ordered yet because we weren't sure we wanted to go. I'm like, I thought you guys already ordered. And everybody, I'm like, literally, and then one of the guys ended up, because he was I guess he was feeling anxious about this whole situation. He's like, I'm just not going to order. I'm like, we already ordered. Now you should order.
Yeah.
And then later I'm like, it's like coming down to like, you want half of mine? Like my stuff. I don't know if you've gotten into these types of situations before, but everybody's intentions were so good. But the result of it was basically nobody getting what they actually wanted because they weren't being honest and communicative. So I think you have to be honest. I think sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable to disagree with somebody or to,
for sure,
be open and vulnerable.
Or even to say what you want. I think it's hard to say what you want and to know, because sometimes I'll just defer to other people because I'm like, I don't know that I want what I want enough to impose my will on other people. So I'll just like let other people decide, and I'm sure I'll be fine with whatever we decide. Yeah. But I'm like happy with the decision. I'll never be like,
I'm also fine with
I actually wanted this.
Yeah.
If I really don't want something, I will say so.
Exactly. I think you have to tell someone if you really don't want. Because if I'm telling somebody I want this, but I don't care, well, I mean that. Like, yes, I would prefer this, but I don't care if we get that. But someone else is thinking, oh, he said he wants this. He's saying he doesn't care, but he probably will care.
I almost can't handle that stuff anymore. I'm like, just say what you want. Okay, just come on. I know you're being nice. I'll actually point out to people. I'll be like, I know you're being nice, but like, do you actually want this?
Yeah, I don't believe, even if it's a good intention, I don't believe you should, in general, lie, out of good intentions. Because that's lying out of good intentions is one of those, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's like an example there.
Yeah.
So I think you should be honest.
Yeah.
At least communicative, empathetic.
Ooh. Is that our word to end the podcast, to start wrapping things up?
It is, isn't it?
I think it is. Yeah.
Let's wrap this thing, Aya. Do
Let's
your thing.
wrap it up. Do my thing. My thing is to tell all of you that if you enjoyed this episode and other episodes of Adulthood Friends with me, Aya, and Josh,
Hi.
who's that person who just said hi, then please follow us on Facebook at our Adulthood Friends page. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen. And if you want to leave a rating or a review, that's great. Some of you already have, and that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
There was one post I read in particular. It was very lovely from
Oh my God, it's just so sweet. Yeah, we were just about to stop doing the podcast, and then we read that review.
Yeah.
And now we're like, you know what? We should keep doing. No, we weren't going to stop. But
well, you say that, but I have moments where I'm like, is this worth it? And then there's this lovely review by our listener Massimo, and I'm like, well, can't stop now.
So sweet.
Yeah. Someone's listening.
Yeah, if you're listening, Massimo, and we know you are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was an awesome review. Yeah. It was really lovely. And he's also continually beating me at chess. I can't win.
Oh, I think I just saw, I was too late to see it, but he just challenged me at chess as well.
Oh, have you played yet?
We're not yet. I want to play. Massimo, we're going to play.
You haven't played with him yet at all?
No, but I want to.
Like for months? I've played like 10 games with him already.
Really? Why aren't you playing games with me?
Because you said you don't like the ones where it's like one day or whatever.
Oh, wait, that's why it's been months. You mean you did like 2 turns in like 1 month?
Yeah.
No, we got to do like a 30-minute game or something.
No, I don't. That's too much of a commitment for me. I want to do my one move and then wait.
You'd rather go for months and months on one game than to finish a game in 15 minutes.
Well, no, I make moves pretty quickly. And when you have time, you can make moves quickly, but it doesn't make sense to.
I don't know. You lose your memory of the game.
This is why we haven't played yet. Anyways, this is why we haven't played. Anytime you want to play a 1 day limit.
I mean, I'll take something over nothing. So I'll.
Well, fine then. Also, because I thought I might get better so that I wouldn't lose to you, but I've accepted that I'm probably going to lose to you.
I don't know.
I haven't
that's
won
what you're doing now. You say that so that when you beat me, you'll be like, oh.
No, I don't. I'm not going to beat you. I don't think you understand how bad I still am at this game. Anyways, that was completely off topic.
I don't care.
So if you'd like to follow us or challenge us on chess.com, please do so. And thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
How do we usually end this thing?
I don't know. I think I'm just talking, I think, and then at some point the music sort of...